Welcome to the Crafty Mini. Now in this one I'm going to do a painting of a miniature I've had in my collection for a long time. I just haven't got around to painting it. You'll see that there's a couple of little colours on there, but nothing I've sort of spent a lot of time with. So, and I really want to get on with this miniature. It's like a cool post-apocalyptic Mad Max Borderlands type thing. Large scale miniature. It's really cool. I got this from a convention. And yeah, I want to get this painted up. So we're going to be looking at this all like the colour palette and things, and going through how. He throws a bleeding brick through my window. Oh, for right. Well, that's just charming. What's this? Right, this is on top of the brick. What the? You want to kit bash a vehicle, you carrot? Okay then. Well, let's put all this away and get some kit bashing. Thanks, Welsh. I'll be billing you for the window as well, mate. Outrageous. Absolutely outrageous. Kit bashing then. Guess that's this week's video. Right then, so welcome to the Crafty Mini, and in this one we are kit bashing. So this is a collaboration with myself and Welsh Miniature Board Gamer. There'll be a link up in the description and up top, so please go and check out what he's making. We don't know what each of us are doing yet. The only thing we've agreed on is it's some sort of vehicle. Beyond that, I don't really know. So I've got some bits together here, some just random stuff out of the junk drawer. So there's this weird cockpit off something, some sort of walker that I bought off Etsy a while ago and I've never actually got around to using. I've got some NDF little bits, cogs and things. And I'm thinking I want to do some sort of, at this point, like a boat or something with the bottles or the lids from the that you see there, and basically turn them into some form of engine propulsion system. Beyond that, I have no idea what I'm doing. Just going to sort of go for it and see what happens. So we've got these cool little MDF cog bits from an old MDF, I think it's a car kit. We're just going to glue these on just to block out the cockpit there and see what we can do with it, and then we're going to go from there and just start adding bits on. Now you'll see throughout the clips I'm just going to collect various pieces. I've got some old World War II vehicle bits, various other things, these little green panels, I'm not sure what they're from. I've basically got a load of stuff together, and I'm just going to be throwing it on and and throughout the process I'm figuring out what the vehicle actually ends up being. Now at this point, with these little these bits that sort of look like skids, I was thinking, oh, maybe like a snowmobile or something similar, but goes through, like, I don't know, arid wastelands, things like that. But it's just a case of putting things together and just seeing how they fit. Now when it comes to kit bashing, it's good to have an idea in mind. So with the brief being a vehicle, we'll be definitely going from there. And it's just a case of adding things together and going for it. If you don't like something, you just break it off again. It's not an issue. These leg bits here, I'm not sure what they're from. They could be from the same kit as the cockpit. I'm not sure. But I've decided now I'm going to use these to bulk out sort of the rear of the vehicle. So that bubble type thing at the front, that'll be sort of like the cockpit, and then we'll go from there. And during this process, I started to think about, or should I do some sort of helicopter instead? And then that's pretty much the way I start to go and careen off into, and that's the design process that I follow. Now from older projects, so these sprues here, they've got these various wheels and things on. I keep hold of them for things like this, for kit bashing. They're either good for physically making something like we're doing here, or if just adding a bit of detail on a base or something like that. It's got this like mud track bit which I still haven't used, and it's just a case of going through, picking something that looks interesting visually, and I'm going to just start seeing if it'll fit. And again, the idea is, at this point I've decided I'm doing a helicopter and just starting to glue bits together. Not really, no rhyme or reason, just figuring it out as I go and having a bit of fun with it. And you can see here on the left one of those boards that's got all these little cogs and things, and I can't remember what it was from, but there's some really nice interesting pieces. And you can see there the lids from the little vape juice bottles that I have. They've become the engines then, and I've filled them in with bits of cork because I've got an idea of how I'm going to paint those at this point. and then it's just a case now of trying to build up the infrastructure and make it look more like a helicopter. So you can see there I've got some of the cog pieces, I've got some of the blades that go across, and then we're going to thicken those out and lengthen them with these bits of plastic as well. The nice thing with MDF and plastic, just normal CA glue, fix everything together quite easily. There was some bits I had to leave to dry overnight, but it's just like you see here, I'm just fitting things up, seeing how they would go together. Is there any way I can use that, so this here like a joint or an angle, to basically increase that back tail that a helicopter normally has, and just like fitting things together, just seeing if it'll work and having fun with it and just trying new things. Now the idea for this project came from one of the podcasts me and Welsh recorded, where we were talking about we'd like to do another collaboration, but we weren't quite sure what, and then just through chatting we came up with the idea of, right, let's kit bash something, and then in order to keep it fair and something similar for each other, we decided on a vehicle. At this point I've no idea what Welsh has made. I know his video will have come out before this one at time of release, but during the actual editing of this video I have no idea. I think we've both gone down the post-apocalyptic route from the little bits that we have divulged to each other, but other than that I am unaware of what's actually going on. And you can see here the shape is slowly starting to make sense. It's looking helicopter-ish, although a bit more ramshackle, almost orky I suppose. With the actual kit bashing as well, one of the things I do enjoy, I don't do it often, but when I do kit bash, is when you get to this point here where you've got a variety of different things stuck together and it's starting to take its shape. It gets to that point where it looks like it's starting to look like the thing that you want to make, and then it's the case of adding all those cool little greeblies, the little bits on, a bit like in this case bits of wiring, little cogs and things, just to make it look a bit more asymmetrical, a little bit more rough and ready, especially for this, where I'm going for this sort of post-apocalyptic type theme. Now at the time I was watching the new season of Fallout, and that's sort of what made me go for a post-apocalyptic. And the circular piece in the middle that's the main sort of cockpit, as I say, I think it's from a Walker model, I'm not sure, but it's 3D printed, but the armour panels are sort of reminiscent to that Fallout vibe. When you can look at things like the Enclave and the Brotherhood of Steel and things. So that sort of was why I went for what I'm going for here. And then it's just a case of going through my little bits box, finding all these little tiny bits that can make cool, like this bit here that I'm sticking on. It makes it look like a cool little sensor array. We can put weapons on and things, and just trying to come up with a story behind the actual function of the miniature as well, and why it's looking the way it is. And these are all the little fun bits now. So you can see like it's got a little sensor on the one side, a little gun on there as well. It needs some sort of protection if it's going to be flying around the wasteland. We've got the elongated, almost like the old skeletal frames that you see on the old helicopters from like the 80s and things. I've got that sort of built out there in the tail, and now it's a case of figuring out, right, I need something then for that rear propeller and the fin as well, and we'll go from there. And this is it built, so I've mounted it to a base with a bit of wire, put some cork down, and we're going to do like a cool wasteland sort of base with that as well. When it gets to this point, when you think you're finished, it's really cool just to have a quick look at it, make sure you're happy with it, with the style and everything, because once you've base coated it, it really does all come together, and all these little different coloured bits and the bits of wood and plastic and resin, they're all going to marry up, and it's time to get some paint on there. And you can see here what I mean. So once it's all sprayed and painted black, it all marries together, it looks nice, everything's unified, and you can't see all the different sort of materials, and you get for me anyway, it makes it look a bit more like it should do, and it's easier for me to then figure out how I'm going to paint it. So starting off, I'm just with an old makeup brush, just going to get some silver dry brushed all over, just to help, one, pick out all the details so I can see it a bit easier, and two, just to make everything stand out and pop that a little bit more. And then we're going to go through and do all the coloured painting of the panels and things, and I want some of this silver still showing through, so I'll go quite scratchy with the paint job. This part of the video I'm not going to go too much in depth with the actual painting itself. As I say, it's very much like a haphazard dry brushy way of putting things on, and just building up different layers of colour, just so they can all marry together for the end finished product. Okay, so I wanted it to look like it's been sort of built up over broken parts of other vehicles and things. But I want that initial base coat to be the really nice sort of olive drab green that you get on a lot of military vehicles, especially sort of like post Second World War, which is roughly where, although it's an alternate universe, where the Fallout universe sort of falls in. And again, I'm being very not particularly neat with this, just brushing it on. I've got an older brush and I'm just slapping it on. I won't be going up to all of the edges. I'll be leaving some of the silver underneath, and then when we weather it up a bit later as well, the colours are all going to amalgamate together. You're going to get little pots of rust and things like that, just to make it all stand out. But when it comes to actual painting, it's things like, so the main panel on the front of the cockpit here, that would have been one piece from a vehicle, so make sure that's all uniformed, and then it's just working out as you're going around, adding all the bits of paint and making sure you just, depending on how dirty and how weathered you want it to look, like you'll see I'm not going all the way up to the edges, and this is quite spotty going on, and that's okay because I want it to look like it's been used and it's worn and all that sort of stuff. Right, so after the first base coat I get a bit more of lighter green just mixed in with that camo green, that olive drab, and then I'm going in now and just doing some patchy, scratchy sort of highlights all the way around the panels. I'm not going right up to the edge. Now when this first goes on, it looks really, really bright, but it does dull down as it dries as well. And I'm just picking out little key areas and just making things pop a little bit more, ready for when we start doing the washes and the weathering. Because obviously they'll dull it down a little bit, so I want the base coat to be a little bit brighter. But you can see here, there's no rhyme or reason. I'm just popping it on as and where I think it'll work. Right, so we've got all the green panels done, all highlighted up. You can see where I've left some of the metallic still showing on the blades and things, because they'll get a different treatment later on. But now it's a case of going all over it, and I'm just putting a really nice simple sepia tone over it. It'll just dull everything down, bring all those scratchy highlighty bits all together as well, and just dirty everything down that little bit that I want, just so the vehicle's looking like it's a bit worn, it's a bit weathered, you know, it's seen a lot of use. And then while this is drying, we'll go in and start doing all the little rust effects and things like that as well. Now also to note, something I've mentioned in other videos, so with the Army Painter washes, they are extremely glossy when they're dry. So it will look a bit out of place in the next few shots, but once it's had the matte varnish, that'll dull everything down again and make it really stand out. So everything's been washed down and dried, and now I'm going to start working on the engines and a bit of the plasma coil on the weapon as well. So very simple, starting off with a nice blue mixed in with a little bit of white, and then as I progressively get to the centre of those engines, I'll add a bit more white and just keep building it up and wet blending in, so you just get a nice variation in colour. And it's just something, it's a nice flash of colour on all this olive drab and this green that's all over it, and just makes it pop a little bit more. And also it's that sort of future tech or alternate tech that you see in the Fallout as well. So just something a little bit different rather than a traditional engine, just to make it look a bit more sci-fi, a bit different. Now at this point, while I'm waiting stuff to dry, I go in with my sand colour, this yellow ochre colour for the base, just putting this on very, very quickly, just because I know it's going to need a couple of coats to build up, and while other things are drying I might as well just get the first coat on this done. Also it'll just set off as well for myself when I'm looking at it, because the base is quite dark, and that's obviously reflecting on the underside of the miniature as well. It's making everything look that little bit darker anyway, so this will brighten it up. It's also for me, it's just, I find it easier just to see what I'm doing and things like that. And then, as I mentioned in a previous video with the shield, as I'm painting stuff, and if I'm getting a bit fed up or a bit bored, paint another part of the miniature just to ease yourself back into it, and just to break up the monotony of, you know, just painting blue or just painting green or whatever it might be. Right, now while that first layer on the base is now drying, so I'm going back to the armour panels, and what I'm doing, I've added a bit more of the lighter green into that camo green I started off with, but this time I'm going to sponge it on, just with a bit of torn up packing sponge. You can see I've just ripped a little bit off, and all this is doing, it just gives a bit of texture, which is always nice, especially to the flatter panels, but also it's building up little extra bits of highlight, because the sponge can't get into all the little recesses and things like a paintbrush could, and it just makes the armour panels look like they've been weathered a bit more, they're a bit more scratched and things. And just going around the model, just picking out a few key areas with the sponge, and it just lightens up those little bits, and as I say, it just adds a bit more character and a bit more detail to the piece as well. Right, so whenever I'm doing vehicles, this is one of my go-to little pieces, and it just adds a nice bit of, again, more colour variation and things. But getting some orange paint extremely watered down and just popping it into the recesses, this will pool up, and as it dries you have these little cool little rust marks, and just looks like it's been a bit more battered and weather worn and things. And I'm just going over certain areas where I think rust would build up, based on just going around and making it up really. There's no sort of rhyme or reason, but it's good just to add a bit of extra texture, bit of detail. With rust and things, you want to think about it in real life as well. You want it to build up in all the recesses where any moisture would have gathered and has slowly worn away the layers of paint on the metal and things. So that's what I'm doing, just going around. It looks quite strong now as it first goes on, because it's the orange pigment, because it's so watery, it'll dry up and you won't get much of it left. And again, just adds a bit more variation to the miniature. At this point it's just a case of going around and picking out a few details. So for the skids, I just wanted to change the colour just so it's a little bit different to the green all over the main of the miniature. You can see there's a few little lenses, there's a bit of the plasma sort of coil on the gun there, just picked out in blue, and it's just going around now and just adding those little bits, of accent colours, just to break it up and make sure it marries a little bit more when it's all done together. And also, while you're painting stuff like this, don't necessarily do everything the same as well. You want to make it as asymmetrical as possible. Just because it's a kit bash, it's something that's been chopped together from various other vehicles and bits when you think of it sort of narratively, and that means you wouldn't, like for example, if the skids were from two different vehicles, then maybe they'd look a bit different as well. But they wouldn't necessarily have the same even amount of wear or paint and things like that. And that's just sort of like the process and the thought behind when you're going around adding these little bits of colour and these little accents here and there. So the miniature at this point I'm pretty much happy with, and then for the base I thought I'd try something different. At the time, no idea if it would work. It did sort of work. Basically what I've done is got some pigment powder, some of this sort of sandy colour, which is just broken up pastels, and then I've added some water and some brown wash, mixing it all up, and I'm going to put this all over the base. Certain key areas underneath the fuselage of the helicopter as well, just because this will dry up and it'll be quite dusty looking, and it just sets off the base and the underside of the vehicle to make it look like it is flying around in a desert. It's kicking up all this dust and debris, and it's getting covered by it. And again, it's just an extra layer of sort of detail, of story for the miniature, and just makes it sort of come together at the end. As I say, when I first put this on, I wasn't sure if it was going to work, so it was very heavy around the cork on the bottom. But as you got out to the bases, out to the thinner parts of the base, I don't use as much. And then when this is all dried, as I say, on the underside of the vehicle as well, is then I go over with a very fine dusting of just the pigment powder itself, just to lighten up a few of the areas and just to make it look that a little bit more dusty. And here it is finished. So really cool project. Thank you, Welsh. Looking forward to seeing yours, bud, and hopefully we haven't gone too off brief here like we normally do. I've really enjoyed this. It's a good bit of fun. It was a nice break up from the usual painting videos that I do. Overall, really happy with it. I haven't gone too in detail with the paint job. It's been quite rough and ready, but I don't mind that. It adds to the sort of aesthetic and the narrative to the piece. Kit bashing's a lot of fun. I don't do it often, not as often as I used to anyway, and I do recommend it to people out there. Have a bit of fun with it. Just chuck stuff together, a bit of glue, and it'll hold, and you can create anything from just random bits of kits, rubbish, anything you have lying around, a bit of wire or whatever, and you can create something quite fun and original. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you're doing any kit bashing yourselves, any tips, anything else, let us know. Let us know what you think as well. Also check out the podcasts that are coming up. We've got some special guests and other things, and we'll see you all on the next one. Cheers.